MSI's B350 Tomahawk is a sight for sore eyes, especially after the last AM4 motherboard featured on the channel. I ended up using this motherboard in my PC, and in this one, I'll go into more detail as to why. From a glance, one can easily notice the heatsinks that cover the MOSFETs for both V-core faces and the SoC and Northbridge faces. This then allows owners of such boards the freedom to choose any type of cooler for their CPUs. Removing the heatsinks allows us examining the topology of the faces used. Each of the two Northbridge faces use two high-side MOSFETs and two low-side MOSFETs. This topology splits the load on both high-side and low-side MOSFETs for increased reliability. The three V-core faces and the SoC face use a more common topology with a single high-side MOSFET and two low-side MOSFETs. It is less resilient than what is used by MSI's A320M Grenade or its own Northbridge faces. In terms of memory slots, the board comes with 4 for a maximum capacity of 64GB. Thankfully, they are of the latches at both ends variety. Definitely something that I learned to appreciate and never take for granted, especially after using boards with the latches at just one end type of a slot. With regards to the expansion slots, MSI made sure that the two PCIe x1 slots are actually usable when a GPU is inserted in the X16 slot. It did that by having one placed above the X16 and the second one low enough to not interfere with that 2-slot GPU. The M.2 slot was then placed between the X16 slot and the second mentioned X1 slot. It has enough room lengthwise to support even the 110mm drives, not just the more common 2280. Now, the cherry on top is, to me, the two plain PCI slots available under the second X1 PCI Express one. While less common nowadays, this would allow you to use some of the older expansion cards, like a Sound Blaster from Creative, to allow you to play games like Half-Life and Fear using environmental audio extensions, or EAX for short. The SATA ports are also placed so as to not interfere with the longer GPU. 2 of them are placed at a 90 degrees angle, making them easier to use with SATA cables that have straight connectors, while one of the other 2 would benefit from a 90 degrees angled cable. As for pin headers and internal connectors, they are basically the same as the A320M Grenade reviewed earlier, but with a different placement. We start with the front audio, followed by the 12V RGB connector, or as I like to call it, the 10% more FPS connector. We then have a system fan header and 2 headers for less used ports, the COM1 or serial port and the LPT or parallel port. You then have the typical 2 USB 2 and 1 USB 3 pin headers and the front panel connector FP1. FP2 is also there and allows you to connect a speaker to then hear post codes. This is useful when having to debug your PC build, and besides the speaker, one can also use the debug LEDs that are available to the side of the board. Back to pin headers. Besides the plethora of system fan headers, the clear CMOS is worth pointing out. The board also comes with a chassis intrusion header, a 14-pin TPM module header, and last but not least, an SPI debug header. That will allow you to read and write the BIOS chip using a flashing tool like the CH341A without needing a CPU in the board, provided that you manage to build yourself an appropriate cable. Okay, the rear I/O. This one plays it safe and sports a combo PS2 and 2 USB 2.0 ports. For start, I'll just add that the USB ports are more likely to be used instead of the PS2 one, just like the HDMI is the more likely to be used video output compared to the VGA-D sub or DVI-D ports. Besides the gigabit LAN and a 3 USB 3.1 Type-A, the board also sports an USB 3 Type-C port that, I have to admit, I don't use for anything. Moving on to the audio solution used, MSI opted for Realtek's ALC892 codec. It supports 7.1 channels, but I was more interested in the noise levels on the microphone input. Fortunately, as you can hear right now, the noise levels are low enough to allow me to use the onboard audio for YouTube. Yay! Now, the BIOS experience will vary depending on your choice. Choosing the expert mode will provide the most control over your PC, but at the expense of usability, and we'll mention this where it's relevant. You do get control over the CPU multiplier in increments of 0.25. This translates into frequency steps of 25 MHz. I personally did not use this one to push the Ryzen 5 3600 that I use. But I did get to use the voltage controls. And although the BIOS allows you to set voltage policies and values on all CPU voltage rails, I was more interested in the V-core rail. What I aimed for is an offset voltage policy, to put a fixed undervolt, and the BIOS lets you do that. In terms of control over the system RAM, you do get access to setting memory profiles, and this is probably going to be enough for most of us. Users who want to tweak subtimings can do that as well. I'll skip that though. You can also select the clock for the Infinity fabric and the ratio between the memory controller clock and the fabric clock. I just left them to auto. When it comes to fan controls, the interface for advanced users allows customizing the fan curve by changing temperatures and their associated fan speed percentage. And while this works fine, it is a bit clunkier than graphically editing the fan curve. One can also specify the type of fan being plugged in for all fan headers. Auto, which I didn't find it to be reliable, DC mode, suited for 3-pin fans, and PVM, for 4-pin fans. Both TPM and rebar settings are also accessible through the setup utility. You need to keep an eye on the former if you plan to use Windows 11, while the latter is crucial when using an Intel GPU. I mentioned already that I use this board in my PC. There are quite a few things that I like about it. The BIOS, the audio input, the heatsinks on the VRMs, the PCI slots allowing use of older hardware, and multiple features to support debugging your build. Using 2 high-side MOSFETs, 2 low-side MOSFETs for the V-core faces would have been nice, as seen with MSI's A320M Grenade. But with heatsinks on top of them, the 1 high-side, 2 low-side topology should have plenty of life in it. I like it. It will probably stay in my PC for as long as I use AM4 processors. If you're still using the B350 Tomahawk, I'd like to hear from you. Did you get to use the PCI slots? What about the USB-C port? As for this video, we're done. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked it, and I'll see you for the next one.